A popular ride at Kings Island celebrates its 20th anniversary season this year. Hello, everyone. Alongside Ryan Sir, I'm Don Helbig, and this is episode 250 of Tower Topics.
Tower Topics is a podcast by Kings Island fans for Kings Island fans, because that's who we are, and that's who we care about. Let's kick it off by thanking our Prestige members. Thank you so much, Miss Mandy, 1983, Lil Mac, 21, Brian Hauser, 330T, Logan Lipper, Aaron Bort, Jacob Fix, Damon Barnes, Stephen Horneck, Eric Grau, Ian Crawford, Dustin Jackson, and Songstress Miku. Thank you guys so much for supporting Tower Topics at the highest level. That's the Prestige level. If you want to be involved in Tower Topics, there's a link in the description. Members get early access to the content, exclusive videos, exclusive live streams, and hey, some tiers even get some free stuff.
So Ryan, the Backlot Stunt Coaster hits 20 this year. Now, you weren't around when Kings Island first opened in 1972, so some of these other anniversaries, have, when the rides are turning, 50, 40, 35, things like that. But for you, it's got to hit a little bit closer to home. Backlot Stunt Coaster. You definitely remember when that opened. So turning 20, that's got to make you feel a little bit older, right?
Yeah, thanks for reminding me, Don. I remember this was the first coaster that I was fully involved in the park with, as far as the rumors, the announcement, watching the construction, and being there for Media Day.
Now, it was announced August 12th, 2004, originally named the Italian Job Stunt Track under the Paramount Parks ownership. Do you remember that announcement?
I do. Yeah, it looked something like this.
Standing by.
Now, this looks so familiar, but it also didn't really turn out the way that they thought it was going to.
As with any
But we're going to take a ride on the original Italian Job Stunt
Once
Track.
seated, please pull back on your lap bar, keeping both legs inside the lap bar and feet under the orange padded foot bar. Stay seated, keep your head against the headrest, and your hands and arms inside the vehicle at all times. Secure all loose articles or leave them with the crew before we roll. Gotta get this in one take, so let's make it a good one, people.
Yeah, this is Chopper 1. Bird has flown. We are in the air in position. Over.
Picture up. Action!
There you go. So it starts off with the launching element. See, Don, this is the part where it's supposed to bounce down the steps.
Yes.
Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Now, this scene turned out nothing like what you're about to see. Yeah.
I remember that day well, and the first time I rode it, you called out the steps there, where it looked like it's going to have that bounce effect going down the steps. It didn't have that, so there was definitely some different things that didn't come out. But at the time of the announcement, I mean, this was Disney, Universal, level, and there was a lot to be excited about with it. There still is. I mean, it's a fun ride, but yeah, I mean, at that time, this was taking, Kings Island to places it had never been before in terms of the level of theming and that.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of promises made with it. And then, now, when it did open, like, the effects were really cool. The problem was they weren't built to last, allegedly.
No, it didn't last like that. But Media Day comes in 2005. And I remember it raining, in part of the day. I remember seeing you there, as part of the event. But it was, really well done. The PR team at the time, led by Jeffrey Siebert, now president of Six Flags Fiesta Texas. I mean, it was a spectacle. great food. Everything about it was, first class. So I remembered that my first rides on it. Just a lot of fun.
Yeah. Now, one element that I feel like a lot of people don't know about, which was really, really cool, but it never was at 100%, was the headlights and the taillights. It actually had headlights and taillights, on the
Hmm.
actual thing. And the fog, or the tunnel, used to have fog in it. So when you
Right.
would go through, when you would traverse through the tunnel, you could see like the beams from the headlights. And I thought that was like the coolest thing ever.
Hmm. Yeah, but it was, just what I didn't like about it was what it replaced.
Right.
Right there in the heart of the park where you had the antique cars there, which looked beautiful with the white picket fence and everything around it. So I didn't really like where it went. I thought at the time that could have gone, uh, back in the area now where you have Orion. It could have gone in that part of the park, back on that side, or somewhere else. So I thought, or maybe an action zone. I thought maybe it belonged over there because there's, if you're talking about action zone, this was everything about action with
Right.
this. So I just thought where it was placed, as your centerpiece, was not good. But it's kind of withstood the test of the time. It's for a lot of you know young thrill seekers. It's maybe one of their first big coasters. It's a nice transition ride from the kids area to that. So there's a lot to like about it for those reasons.
Yeah. Um, and it has changed. Obviously, it was Italian Job Stunt Track, and they did not retain the Paramount movie rights when Cedar Fair took over the park. Um, so
Hmm.
it used to be red, white, and blue cars, and then they changed it up to be a red train, a blue train, and a white train. They removed a lot of the Mini Cooper details, like the doors, especially new logos or anything like that. Um, and they removed the splash. Actually, they removed all the water. So they removed the where the helicopter would shoot at you, and the barrels would shoot water up in the air, and then you go through the sewer and then splash down at the very end. So they removed all those water elements. Um,
Yeah, so you could say it's a watered down type ride now with the theming elements.
I would say it's a dried up version of
Dried
the
up,
theming
okay,
elements.
dried up version, but still
Yeah.
fun, right?
Oh no, it's still fun, and it's still a very good transition ride. Now I did get to ride the one at King's Dominion a couple of years ago at this point. But the cool thing about King's Dominions is they did a little bit more as far as the like doing stuff with the helicopter scene, but they don't have fire or water. They haven't for a long time. So we're very lucky to still have the fire element today.
Right. Yeah, I always liked Kings Island's version better than the other two. I don't know whether it was because that was the first of the three that I rode, or it's because it's my home park, but I've always enjoyed that one a little bit better.
Yeah. So they opened up the other two, the one in Canada as well as King's Dominion in 2005 and 2006.
Hmm.
Rebranded as Backlot Stunt Coaster in 2008.
Right.
So it basically it launches, it was about 45 miles an hour or so into a triple helix. The triple helix actually kind of makes me brown out a little bit. It gets a little intense for a moment, and it's like I start to lose vision. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it does have that intense moment to it going through there, but there's some fun, you know, uh, elements on that ride. There's you get off the ride and you had fun. It's thrilling. I think that for me, while it's intense enough, for that thrill, it's also approachable for those younger guests. I remember taking my daughter on it. It was one of her first bigger coasters that she went on. So for the first timers, it definitely is one of those kind of rides that can bridge that gap between, the kiddie rides and then moving on to rides like the Beast and Orion.
Yeah, like I said, a very good transitional ride. So the ride turns 20 this year, which again is hard to believe. And it was repainted in 2021 through 2022. Fortunately for that ride, it having that gray track, it doesn't seem like you could tell that it needed paint really badly, but it's appreciated nonetheless. But do you think that since it's turning 20 that they'll do anything this year as far as maybe sprucing it up or fixing the effects or anything of that sort?
I don't think they'll do anything, specifically because it's 20. I think outside of the routine, off-season maintenance that goes on with the ride, just painted it going into the 2022 season, which was Kings Island's 50th. So I don't think they'll do anything, there for that. I think what it'll get is, they might acknowledge it on a social media post, maybe a blog, and just kind of mention that it's, now 20, and I think that'll be it. I don't think it'll get any kind of real grand celebration.
Yeah. It's almost old enough to drink, and they won't even throw it a party. 20 years. So it was manufactured by Premier Rides out of Maryland. Has a 31.2 foot drop, which doesn't sound like a lot, but this ride isn't about the drops. And an 88-degree bank turn, which is nicknamed the Millennium Force turn, by the way. That's what we started calling it, because it looks like that big turn at the very end of Millennium Force.
But like I said, it's got a little bit of intensity to it. So, I mean, there's enough there for it to, deliver that thrill. If you're somebody that loves the rides like Orion and Diamondback and the Beast, there's still enough thrill to make this ride fun, something you want to do when you're visiting Kings Island. Yeah.
So let's ask the listeners, did you guys ever ride it as Italian Job Stunt Track? What were your memories of that? And if not, if this ride was essentially always there for you, at where in your coaster journey was it? Was it something like you needed to ride this before you're ready for the Beast, or did this seem intimidating to you because of the launch, or what? Like, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. All right, Don, tell us about the t-shirts.
Tower Topics t-shirts come in a wicked green color this year, any size that you need. If you're interested in one, real simple on how to get one. You can either message us on X. Be sure to follow us there, which is Tower_Topics. And we'll send you the QR code. Or you can drop me an email, which is donhelbig@themeparksbydon.com. And I'll send you the QR code there. In the subject line, just put that you're interested in a t-shirt. And again, $22. That includes shipping. And once the transaction goes through, just a matter of days before you get your shirt. And for Ryan and I, it's always, it's always nice when we are out places, not Kings Island, but, it could be Jungle Gyms, it could be Meyer, it could be a Reds game, could be another amusement or theme park. And we see someone wearing a Tower Topics t-shirt. It's always, kind of, nice to see that, there's fans that are out there supporting, their interest for the show.
Yeah, $22 including shipping. Shoot Don an email if you're interested.
And if you happen to be wearing one, you see Ryan at Kings Island, he'll be happy to autograph it for you.
I'll sign your shirt. I just don't bring a pen with me, so make sure you bring one. Or we can go to guest services and ask for one.
We'll go to guest services, right? That's where you'll need to go to get Ryan to sign your shirt.
Perfect. All right, let's move on to a segment we like to call Buy or Sell.
Buy or sell. All right. Ryan, are you buying or selling this? Rivertown.
No, I'm kidding.
Rivertown will be the next area to get a major overhaul.
I'm going to sell it. I think that the next major overhaul, and I'm not saying this is next year or anything, but the next major thing we're going to see with the park is one of two things. Either Action Zone gets some sort of a major rehab of, whether it's DC Universe or whatever, that area needs a hug. So if they end up putting something in like the Skyflyer spot, that would be a good opportunity to do something there.
Right.
My other thought is if they replace the Vortex, like they fill the Vortex plot, that would be a good opportunity to really spruce up that area. So I'm going to sell because I don't have Rivertown on my radar. What about you?
I don't have it either, so I'm going to sell. I'm definitely on board with Action Zone being the next area of the park that gets kind of a pretty massive makeover. And after that, I think, then the Vortex spot comes into play. I think that's just really an isolated spot. I don't think that's going to lead to a whole area getting redone. So, yep, definitely selling that. I don't see Rivertown getting that kind of massive overhaul, that kind of love for several years down the line.
Yeah, very cool. Let's move on to the listener questions. first listener question. This is from Luke. He's from Cincinnati, Ohio. Luke said, I've been thinking a lot about the rumored removal of Flight of Fear. As a former ride operator, I've always known that its days were numbered. When I worked at the park 2017 through 18, I often heard electrical or mechanical issues, almost always related to the launch system. In 2018, the ride had launch incidents almost weekly, including significant downtime, as it waited for launch parts to be delivered from its sister's park, King's Dominion. My home ride was Vortex, and whenever I was asked how long I thought it had, I always answered years. In Vertigo or Flight of Fear will be removed before Vortex. I was confident. Needless to say, I was wrong. Anyway, I always hoped that Flight of Fear would get a refurbishment and updated LSM launch system and new trains rather than be completely removed. Given that Six Flags has a long history of working with Premier, and Wonderland is debuting a new Premier coaster this year, how likely do you see them hiring Premier to update Flight of Fear? Maybe a package deal for both iterations. I've ridden West Coast Racers and Full Throttle at Six Flags Magic Mountain, and I love them both. I found the trains to be a big upgrade in comfort compared to Flight of Fear and Backlot too.
I don't see a lot of money or investment going into Flight of Fear. I think they'll, maintain it. I don't think it's on the chopping block and will be gone, anytime in the next, 4 to 5 years. But I don't see it getting any kind of a major overhaul.
I don't either, unless they come up with some sort of system, because I know limbs are very inefficient with electricity and LSMs are pretty efficient with electricity comparatively. So if it's one of those things where, it costs $1 million for 3 trains or however much it costs, but they can save that in electricity in 3 or 4 years, like I could see them flipping that bill, but you're right. They're not going to actively do it and get new trains for guest comfort or whatever. Now, with that being said,
I don't see like a total retheme or anything like that with it either.
No, I don't see it. Now at King's Dominion, they're getting a retheme. That'll be really interesting when those details come out. But I would say that when the end of life happens for Flight of Fear, God willing, it doesn't become a haunt maze like the Crypt. They'll probably replace it with another launch coaster, but I don't think it'll be as tall and fast and that sort of stuff. I think it'll be more like Dark Coaster, where it's real close to the ground and stuff. Which, if they do that in a giant building, that'll kind of be an atrocity. But if they do that in a giant building and then utilize the giant building for special effects and stuff, that could be cool.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Next, we have Mike from New Baltimore, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
He said, if Kings Island knew then what they know now, would the Vortex have been torn down?
You've indicated that no, you don't think they would make that decision again.
I don't think they would have. I think, especially after they saw what Busch Gardens did with the Loch Ness Monster, doing the refurbishments on that, that ride is now, got a long future ahead of it. I think if they had to do it again, they would have, put the money into it to make sure the Vortex was preserved for future generations to enjoy. I don't think it would have been torn down. I think it was just, they looked at the price tag, time to move on from it. And I don't think they would have done that again.
And I think that may be the thought process that saved maybe the Bat, maybe in Vertigo, where it's kind of like any sane company with the problems that Bat had a few years ago would tear it out.
Oh, yeah.
I was shocked when it reopened after it threw a wheel and tore its track up and stuff, but they did it probably because they realize that these things mean stuff to people, and because of that, they can't just be super willy-nilly about it.
Yeah, I think that if they had to revisit that, I think that they would have, fought to keep it and spend the money to make the refurbishments, do what they had to do to make sure that ride was around for future generations.
Yeah, very good question. Next question, Kevin from Ohio. He said, is there part of you that wishes Herschend had acquired Kings Island over it becoming a Six Flags park?
I think based on my experiences at the different Herschend properties, I think that, there would have been no downside. to that. I think when you visit their properties, there's a culture that's in place. There's that attention to detail. Uh, you know, the guest. There's a lot of value that gets delivered. So I don't think that there would have been any downside to that. So I would not have been opposed whatsoever had that been a situation where Kings Island, the ownership of the park, ended up in Herschen's hands. What about you, Ryan?
I've thought about this like a lot. If I could snap my fingers and Kings Island becomes a Herschen park, I would do it.
Yeah, me too.
There's the business side of it though, because if Herschen, Six Flags ain't going to sell Kings Island or Herschen. We've talked about this at length. It's going to be Kings Island, Worlds of Fun, Michigan's Adventure. It's just like the whole thing of they probably just wanted Kennywood, but they had to pick up all of the park entertainment part, the US based parks, Palace Entertainment. So the thing about Herschen is it's a very morally focused family business. And
there's those values there, right?
If they bought something that big, they would either have to go public or they would end up being owned by a private equity firm, and neither of which would bode well for your experience as a guest. So to say, snap your fingers and it becomes a Herschen park, like they give it to them in a heartbeat. Absolutely. From the business end of things, that would be a little scary, especially now since they've clearly, been moving a lot of chess pieces around. I don't know if they're going to be in the position to. I don't know if they'd be in the position to buy Kings Island right now, even if it was offered to them. But very good question. So Don, if somebody has questions, how do they send them in?
A couple different ways. You can send us a message through our X, which is Tower_Topics, or you can send it through email. You can email me at donhelbig@themeparksbydon.com. Just make sure in the subject line that you're putting, question for TT. Also include your first name and where you're from, with your question. We love to share with our audience where everybody's from, and just put your question there, and we'll find a way to get it on the show.
Perfect. Yeah, we love hearing your questions. Very little's off limits, so long as YouTube doesn't demonetize us. But hey, I'm Ryan Sir, along with Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.